My name's Krystle Dos Santos. I'm a singer, songwriter, actor, sort of dabbling in the writing area for, theater and other areas. And I've been doing it professionally for about 10 years. My first album came out 10 years ago. So I had been singing before that, but I consider that first album sort of the launch pad of my professional career. I consider professional career when you start getting paid for the art that you're doing. But I'd always sort of had arts in my life, whether that be drama class or I was a cheerleader for 6 years, and performing has always been a part of my being. And I have performed mostly in Canada, a little bit in the US. And yeah, I've kind of kept it to my closer sphere. But the sky's the limit. We're not done yet, right? And in terms of who I am and how I found my unique voice, I think that's something that's still continuing to develop, and it always develops over time. As May was saying, every challenge that comes is a new opportunity to learn something about yourself. It's a new opportunity to grow and to continue to shape. And how do I say this? It's like a clay mold, and as time goes on, you keep, the definition gets more defined. So I think I'm slowly coming into my sharper definition. I'm going to echo something that another person had mentioned before, is to find a catch, a specific, something very special about yourself, that you can really sort of use as leverage to move forward, or as a launch pad to find a certain image or style or whatever it is that you're looking to do. And I wrote down today, it can be anything from the way you dress, the way you phrase, your particular tone in your voice. It could be so many things, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with the specific art. It could be with how you style your hair, or the philosophies that you believe in, or, this political message that you want to uphold. It can be a lot of unique things. And I think a great way to start finding that is also, if you can't seem to sometimes I find it hard to look into myself or see myself from an outside perspective. I think asking friends, asking other artists, asking people what they think, really sticks out about you particularly, can help. And then you can sort of, make a list and decide what it is that you want to sort of display. I had a lovely conversation with my husband before we started, because I always get great perspective from him when it comes to this. And he said, finding how much of yourself you want to share can also be really valuable too. Because if you share too much, there's so many things that you could either lose yourself, you could hurt yourself, you can have bad experiences. For example, if you let too much of yourself go. I was in an acting class, and I was together with my husband at the time. She wanted us to kiss other actors. She wanted us to almost get down to our underwear, get naked. She wanted us to do so many things that I think would have been so detrimental and so regretful, in the end, that you have to really create and set boundaries for yourself. But then on the other hand, if you let too little forward, then I think it may come off as ingenuine or inauthentic. So there's a fine balance of figuring out how much of yourself you want to share. And that can be in any way, like maybe your online presence, maybe how much you want to say about yourself and your songwriting, maybe, talking about personal experiences as opposed to telling a story of someone else's experience. So there is a fine line between finding your particular voice, and how much of yourself you want, but there has to be sort of the right balance of enough so that you're coming across nice and authentic and real, and showing a real part of you, but creating the boundary enough so that you're safe and that what you're creating feels okay to you. Because you don't want to, you can go too far at first, but it's easier to go slowly and add more of yourself to the mix, as opposed to, going way too far. This is a weird example, but you know, and there's nothing wrong with this profession, but maybe you go all the way to stripper when all you want to do is burlesque, if that makes sense, do you know? So you can sort of really you can take the steps as opposed to going complete extreme. You can kind of slowly get there and discover what you like, and maybe end up at stripper, and that's great. But maybe all you wanted to do was burlesque, right? Sorry for the weird example, but I think that really, I think it really shows the sort of pacing or managing how fast or how slow you want to go. So I'm just going to step back right there. There you go. Yeah.
Hi everybody. I'm Deirdre Morgan. I work as an instructor in the music departments at Vancouver Community College and Simon Fraser University. So like Mayhan, I'm kind of coming from this musician who's also an ethnomusicologist. Our field is very well represented in emergence. I'm a musician, performer, scholar, teacher, and basically my full-time job at Vancouver Community College, which is where I do most of my teaching. That is really where I work as a mentor for emerging musicians, as my full-time day job. And it's a huge pleasure and privilege to do that. So being able to extend that work into emergence for women and female and non-binary identified folks specifically is something that's really an honor. This topic of uniqueness is so dear to my heart. And it's on many, many levels. I'll talk a little bit probably now and also in the breakout sessions about kind of just feeling like a weirdo my whole life and feeling like I didn't quite fit in, and ultimately making that work for me. Ultimately learning how to make that work for me rather than fighting against that. That's a really, really big message that I have. And in terms of, and that's like on every level of my life and my personal identity, but also in my musical life. The reason why finding my uniqueness has been so important is that the instrument that I study is a bit unique, right? So this is the Jew's harp, which is not Jewish and not a harp, also known as the mouth harp, known by many, many different names, found in hundreds of different cultures around the world. And I have been playing and researching and studying this instrument for the past 15 years. I've traveled around the world. I've played at festivals devoted to this instrument around the world. I've met amazing people around the world. I've collaborated musically and made so many amazing friendships around the world because of my pursuit of something that people always told me, are you sure? That's kind of weird, because this is the sound it makes. Now, sometimes Zoom has these filters that cut out the sound, so I don't know if you actually could hear it. So yeah, it's a mouth resonated instrument. It's quite unusual. It plays, you change the shape of your mouth cavity to make different notes come out. You can play melodies. The instrument is very misunderstood. It is often extremely underestimated and often just kind of brushed to the side. So because I have spent the last 15 years of my life obsessed with something that nobody thinks matters, I have a lot of feelings about finding your uniqueness and what it means to just keep pursuing the thing and keep believing in the thing that you know has value. And the biggest thing for me was to find the other people who believed that it had value. I had to find my community. That was the most important thing to me, because it was always just me alone going, I think this thing is really cool. I think we can learn a lot about the history of the world, quite frankly, and a lot about the different cultures that play it through the instrument. There's so many different playing techniques. The instrument functions as a symbol in different cultures. It's used in a whole bunch of different contexts, everything from like trance and shamanism to courtship between young couples to just passing the time on your own. It has so many different contexts. And to me, everyone would always go, oh, it's so small. Well, since when is the physical size of a thing actually commensurate with its value, right? We don't say to a microbiologist, oh, why do you study microscopic things? That's too small. Nothing's too small because everything is connected, right? So to really to really find that conviction and that self-belief that the thing that you think is the best thing ever and the most important thing to you, there are others who will share that value, and you gotta find them. And sometimes you have to go to the ends of the earth literally to find those people, like I did. Like I had to travel, I had to save my pennies, I had to apply for grants to get out to these festivals in Europe and Russia, and to do research in Indonesia, and to find the others who were like me. And it was totally worth it. I have absolutely no regrets about that. It made my life, it still enriches my life to this day. And it was the stepping stone into my life in music. So the other thing that I want to say around discovering your uniqueness is to have your own definition of success when it comes to the music industry. I think many emerging performers get really, really attached to the performance side and really, really attached to trying to gain some kind of mainstream validity. Now, absolutely go for that. If that's your dream, if that's your mouth harp, then like cling to it with the death grip, right? And keep going. But I just wanted to point out that for every mainstream success that does follow sort of more of a formula, there is an outlier weirdo freak who also finds a successful life in music. So there are many, many, many paths to a life in music. You need to define what your life in music is going to look like. And if you're someone like me, it might look more interdisciplinary, right? You might be a performer, but also working in education. You might be a performer, but you also might be somebody who curates or hosts or organizes events that helps you create more of that community around what you're doing. Yes, organizing events is a ton of work, but guess what? You meet tons of people, and it also gives you this whole other administrative skill set that is totally a transferable skill that you can transfer back to, for example, grant writing. And that all goes on your resume, right? Nothing is wasted in your life in music. So to see not just the performance, but everything that you do, that is part of you living as a musician. That's part of you living as an artist. Maybe I'll expand on more of this stuff in the Q&A and the breakout rooms, so I don't take up too much more time here. But just one final thought that I have around finding your uniqueness might sound kind of counterintuitive, but my advice is actually collaborate with others. Collaborate with others as much as you can, because this will reveal more to you about your values than almost anything else. Whether you're collaborating with another musician, which can be great, another musician who's similar to you, or another musician who's very different from you, maybe from a different culture, musically, or geographically, or maybe you're just collaborating with a producer, or you're even further afield, interdisciplinary collaborations. What about trying to collaborate? Do you have a friend who's a visual artist? Do you have a friend who's in computer programming who maybe wants to do some live programming to your music? There are so many possibilities for you to delve into within your own network of people you already know, and use those talents and try to collaborate. And that will really help you understand what your values are and what your uniqueness is. So I think I'll wrap it up there. There's a bunch of stuff on the table, but yeah, thanks for listening.
You, Deirdre and Krystle, really enjoyed what you have just said. I think finding out who am I is a lifelong search, and as a person, you probably started as being just like doing music and following the trends, especially pop music for young people. But then gradually that artistic, that creative energy in you start to grow, and you start to feel that you have something individual, and you have something that belongs to you, that uniquely that you want to say. And that is where the real creativity and the real you start to come out, start to shine. I wanted to go to that point that Deirdre just made. Collaboration is really a good point to find yourself. My story of becoming an international musician or broaden myself was starting from the point that I met another musician, Mandy Rushton in Vancouver. After I graduated from UBC, I decided to stay in Canada to learn to become an international musician. That's what was my hope. But I didn't know how to do that. But I had good instinct. I thought, okay, I'm going to call a musician asking for help or, share idea. So when I met with Randy, and he first thing he asked me to do is to play with him. He also plays this instrument. And he said, let's play something. I said, oh yeah, why don't you give me some music? And he said, let's improvise. I didn't know how to improvise. As a Chinese conservatory trained musician, is very much like a violinist, a pianist in the Western conservatory. So without a piece of music, I couldn't play. So he guided me and started me to learn improvisation. And that was a huge door opened for me, because growing up in China during the Cultural Revolution, as I said, there was very limited music resource, especially variety. So it's not about me choosing. I didn't even know at that time there was a personal choice. There wasn't. Even as a professional musician, we were just playing what given us or told for us to play. There was no creation. So my personal creation, or who am I, really came out to start to build, to construct, is after I came to Canada. And that comes specifically from learning the language of improvisation. So I think personal growth and artistic growth, they go hand in hand. As you trying to find your artistic path, and you find your personal growth, and your personal growth helps you to lift yourself as an artist. So that, I think, you cannot rush, but you have to be in this moment. You are in your 20s, you're in your 30s. Each stage, there is a new you. You transform, you grow, and you become, bigger, not body, bigger in your heart and also in your mind. And that's one thing. And also finding your market. And playing a Chinese long zither, although it's a very popular instrument in China, even say in the world, there are 20 million performers. Still in the West, it's considered a very unusual instrument. No matter how many hundreds of times I tell audience, this is a Chinese long zither, it's a zheng, still every single time, wow, somebody said, this is the first time I see this. I've never seen this instrument. So how could that be? That just tells how big the audience range. And for me, definitely world music is one thing, because I play this non-Western instrument. It's in the market of world music. But also because I am trained as a conservatory musician, is very much a chamber musician as well. So it's easy, or I wouldn't say easy, it's easier for me to adapt myself to a Western chamber music genre. And in Canada, this I want to address again and again, because Canada has multicultural cultural policy, and our society is built upon multicultural. So we have a lot of opportunities. stereotype for Asian woman like me who came here in my middle age, I already don't belong to that Asian flower, young woman. And now I belong to tiger mom. It's too stereotype. But in between, there's a lot of room for musicians to find. So find your audience. So my audience could be Asian community, Chinese community specifically, but because I learned improvisation, I create new music. This is not a lot of Chinese would say are familiar with and would appreciate it right away. So my audience is actually mostly mainstream. Concert series, community concert series, and chamber festivals, world festivals. So I created my repertoires specifically to reach out to the audience in those markets. And also we have to know we have to wear a lot of hats, doing this, doing that, especially in the unique market like this. Deirdre play a jar harp. You cannot just going into one kind of market. Krystle probably has the larger market in comparison to Krystle and myself. So that's another point. But the main point I have is that who am I is a long-term development. You have to be mindful to who you are at this moment, but also everything you have experienced, everything you have learned, there is never a waste. It will be part of bigger you. And as you get ready, as you become better and better in your craft, help is there, opportunity is there, and you will, find a right spot for you. Thank you. Could we use this opportunity to have the mentees to introduce themselves?
Sure. Is everybody okay with that? All the participants? Yeah. And I'm just, I don't know if you have the same order of video feeds on your screen, but I'll start with Mandy. Mandy, do you want to unmute your mic and introduce yourself?
Sure. Good early morning, everybody. I'm a singer, actor, dancer, getting into voiceover, and it was a really rad opportunity to, share and connect with, like-minded females. So I'm really jazzed about that. I did a lot of musical theater growing up, and I've always loved the backstory of who and how and why came together to write these songs that became the Great American Songbook. I love songs. That's really at the root of what I love. And my partner, who you probably saw just moments earlier, we met doing musical theater, and we love sharing the Great American Songbook. And we're working on more repertoire. And our next door neighbor, who was at the door earlier, sorry about that, we've been doing shows since February 1st. I think it was like our 18th show. Every Friday we do a live jazz stream, and we've been really trying to navigate this wonky tonky territory of going from doing live shows, because February 1st we actually turned our artist studio loft here in Richmond into a jazz club. And so we had 20 seats, but it was right around that time of late January, February, when everyone was getting sick. And so I had friends that were wanting to buy a ticket and support us, but they were too sick. And I was like, well, that sucks. People are sick in bed or at the hospital. Those are the exact people that could really benefit from live music and that whole experience. So we're really trying to work on something in that vein. And also like singing telegram situation, because so many people are celebrating birthdays alone. I mean, things are kind of opening up, but as May was saying, you know, this opening up too quickly is really wreaking havoc on society, and it's, you know, really worrisome. And you know, as performers, we're sensitive creatures, and you know, we really want to get out there and start performing, but really feeling huge trepidation about doing that. And so from the comfort of our own home is feeling more safe, but still trying to navigate that territory is really, you know, every day we're learning more and more. And we've also been learning on Zoom. My boyfriend and I have been fortunate to be doing live streamed murder mystery shows based out of Las Vegas. So we have this combined cast of Canadian and Americans. And so we're learning as we go. And they always say that they feel like an octopus trying to manage and wrangle all of the updates and everything. So my hat goes off to you. It's no small feat. And, you know, almost every other day there's a Zoom update and Facebook changes and, you know, all these rules and regs that you're trying to navigate. So, and trying to stay true to your art and your craft and your voice, and, you know, practicing self-care and all of that stuff. It's been really tough. I also in the last little while have been for 8 years struggling with which now they seem to have diagnosed as endometriosis, and so I struggle from chronic pain, and not easy in this time of when everything's shut down, and the surgery that I'm slated for is now pushed to maybe a year or more. So, you know, my heart goes out to all those people that really have disabilities that are seen. Mine is unseen. And I always put on a brave face, and makeup for me is kind of that veneer of I'm fine, I'm okay, I can function. But, you know, as women, I think we really push harder than is necessary sometimes, but trying to navigate all of that. So that's me in a lengthy nutshell.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Mandy, for sharing that. And I appreciate you talking about your journey to wanting to join this workshop. And also it sounds like your ensemble and your musical theater, you're managing to carry on despite all of this, you know, these logistics that we're dealing with, you know, never mind health, and all of the unrest that we're dealing with as well. You know, really is a testament to how the beauty of our artistic and musical expression is just so vital to helping us survive through this period in our history.
And how you were saying, you know, connecting with people that you wouldn't even think, you know, those collaborations are so paramount. I'm very methodical and I almost overthink everything, whereas my boyfriend, as an Aries, he just wants to do things. So we've really kind of come to this interesting compromise. And then our piano player, next door neighbor, he's super tech and he's the piano player. So he kind of, you know, massages all of us into some kind of semblance of order. So yeah, we've been really thankful to have the music to come together, even when we're having some of our worst days. You know, in the tail end of a week, Friday is like, wow, did we make it? I don't know. Are we going to make it to Saturday? You know, like there's been, you know, a lot of turmoil and, you know, death and all this stuff. So
I'm glad
staying true to the music has been huge to process all the feelings.
I'm glad to hear that you have a supportive community as well, because that's also really essential during this time. And yes, we're going to say hello to Jill and her video feed. And I know you had your hand up earlier, and I welcome you to introduce yourself and just tell us a bit about what brings you to this emergence workshop.
Good morning. How is everybody? Hi. Saying hello. I'm in Summerland in the beautiful Okanagan. Yeah, I'm just starting to do my original music. I've worked in actually at the Maple Leaf Singers, the show choir in Vancouver. I was in that years ago. I also used to sing in musicals and theater and that sort of a thing. A few years ago, my husband, he plays everything. He's a multi-instrumentalist and he's also an audio engineer. He does it all. And I kind of grew up with music. Everyone in my family played music. And I was kind of the black sheep because everything was Western music, you know. And I was more the Aretha Franklin, you know, rock person, right? So I didn't really fit in. But I think over the years of doing theater, which I still love theater, and I love being on stage and I love doing all that. But I think I'm just at that point in my life where I need to do my own original music. And so my husband and I are working on that. And I write the lyrics and he writes the music. And we have a little bit of everything. So I don't really want to fit in a box. But I mean, I can do anything from opera to rock, country, pop, fantasy, metal, everything in between. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what we're working on right now. So I guess it is a little bit harder to find out who I really am, if I can do all of those things. But my husband and I do a duo, and we're the Tomberwolves out of Summerland, and we've done like Peach Fest and big festivals with our full band, and also with our duo too, which we've been doing a lot since COVID because it's been tough, right? Not a lot of people can afford it, but yeah, I guess that's a little bit about me. And I guess just the question is, you know, like, is it okay to not fit in a box? Is it okay to not just be one genre? You know, I want to be all of them. And that's why I kind of like being in here with you ladies, because you have so many different styles in music. And I like to take every style that's out there and integrate some kind of component into my music, into my songwriting. So yeah, I guess that's about it.
My name is Tissa, and yeah, so I was part of the Emergence program last year, and I found it to be an incredible experience overall. And so a little bit about me. I am a singer, songwriter, instrumentalist, and I come from a family of Persian musicians. So my mom is a Persian singer and my grandpa's a Persian singer. But I actually grew up outside of Iran for all of my life. I was born in Austria, and then I moved to Canada when I was 14. But my first language was Farsi, and so growing up I had a lot of just that melding of all those three cultures together. So listening to a lot of Persian music, listening to like at the same time listening to like the Spice Girls or like Michael Jackson, people like that, you know. So but music was always a big part of my life from the beginning, and probably because I came from such a musical family. And being at the Emergence program last year, so we started off the conversation today talking about sort of how to discover what your uniqueness is as an artist. And being at Emergence last year really helped me with that, because I guess I'd just always taken the sort of Middle Eastern aspects for granted, and I guess I didn't even quite realize how big of a influence they were in me in my singing and songwriting until somebody else pointed it out to me. So when people would tell me, "Oh, you sound like a little bit like your music is influenced by Persian music," even though I wasn't actually writing Persian music. So it's just because I was so immersed in it growing up, of course. And so since then, I've really sort of embraced that as my identity, because it felt right. It felt really right, and felt like I kind of came into place. And I have 2 taglines now that I use for bios and stuff. One of them is the Persian powerhouse, and and the other one is the R&B songstress with a Middle Eastern flair. So that's a little bit longer, but it describes like my genres. And yeah, so I wanted to come back just to check in with everybody, with the mentors and the other mentees, and meet the new people that are joining this year, and yeah, sort of check in, and always looking to be able to learn more about, you know, artistry and everything that's around it. So yeah, thanks again for having me.
Jill, you wanted to ask about whether we need to box ourselves in, you know, if we're, you know, versatile performers and love to do many things. What if you want to be in all genres?
Yes, the answer is yes, absolutely.
Yes.
You can do whatever you want. But more specifically, and probably more useful in terms of its information, is that is something that I've personally struggled with my entire career. And I'm going to get real honest with you. I think being a Black soul singer, even though I love rock, even though I love jazz, even though I'm always sort of directed, and I don't want to say pigeonholed because I love this genre too, as an R&B singer. And I don't always fit there. For example, that last song is the last thing that you would put on an R&B station. That song is like a pop rock whatever, you know, with a soulful vocal. And I've always found that, you know, I really love singing blues and I love singing, you know, whatever else, but I will always somehow, because of the way I look, get narrowly put into a different genre that may not fit with exactly what I'm doing. That being said, if you think of a lot of the artists that you like and what genre they fit in, they likely will bend and fit into a lot of other genres as well. And I think having a focus or a sound is a good thing. That's what makes you particularly saleable, unique, interesting, and just genuinely, you know, an artist. And I think that taking everything that you said that you do, you named like 8 genres, which I thought was so cool. That's going to make you stand out. That's going to make you interesting, and that's going to make you, you know, unique and different from everyone else. And that's the whole point, right? You don't, I think, you know, you want to model yourself after the people you love, but then you want to find your own voice within. I think finding your own voice is that diverse interest. And if you do an opera vocal over a rock, you know, composition with a little bit of soulful backing vocals and maybe a gospel choir mixed in, I'd listen. That sounds amazing.
I'd do it.
Do you know what I mean? So there's no limit to what you can do. In fact, the opposite is, I think, right where you're going to find your magic. And being able to, I think the boxes only exist so that people can identify you or sell you in the format of
Radio.
a record label, a radio station, you know, a Spotify playlist. I think that if you break open those walls of the box, then people will put you where they hear you being without you restricting yourself. And you can then grow and be whomever you want to. And if somebody asks you, you know, and you have to pick a genre, make up a name. Make up your own genre. There's no rules. And that's the best thing, you know. There are rules in this sort of corporate world of music, but in the independent world of music, which is taking over everything, the magic comes from, if I heard somebody was a, I don't know, like a soul metal singer. That's weird, right? But, you know, if I heard that, then I'd want to listen to them more than I'd want to hear somebody who's like, oh, I just sound exactly like Aretha Franklin. I mean, if you sounded like Aretha Franklin, I'd be all over it. But you know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna, it's better to sort of create your own world than try and fit within something else. So blow apart the walls of a specific genre or the confines of a label and make your own, or make your own combination or whatever. It's like your own recipe, you know, put whatever you want on your musical pizza and people are going to eat it.
Musical pizza. That's a good. Well, that's what we thought. We're like, okay, well, what are we going to name our album? Like mixtape? I don't know, because sometimes people have a little bit of everything, right? So yeah,
Exactly.
That's cool. Yeah, I just did a Zoom, like a free session on jazz too. I love jazz. I love Nina Simone. And
Me too.
you know what? The more that I actually drew back into Nina is that she was the same, really, in a lot of ways. She wasn't what people thought she was. She wasn't just jazz. I mean, she was multi-genre, right? And you kind of get stuck in that stigma. And I don't think, like, I'm not the type to listen to anybody. Like I like to not follow the rules. And it's just nice to hear from another artist to say it's okay, because I know a lot of people that are in the music industry and they say, who are you? What are you doing? Right. And I'm like, I'm doing it all. So because I want to, because why not? It's an art, right? Like the last song that we wrote is not your verse, chorus, right? It's a picture. We're painting a picture, right? And I don't think if you're painting a picture, nobody can tell you what kind of artist you are if you're painting the picture, right? So, I mean, that's kind of how my husband and I see it, is that if we take all these genres, or maybe an idea, or maybe you did something cool and I'd be like, oh, like that's awesome. Maybe I should add that kind of a vocal technique or whatever, right? I think that we should all be free to learn from each other. So I just think that's great to hear it from somebody else though. So
I wanted to give, of course, and I wanted to give just like a couple of random examples. Prince, Queen,
Queen.
these
Watch their
iconic
documentary.
people, right? These
Yeah.
iconic people have never fit into a box. In fact, they created their own sounds. They created their own genres, and then they became celebrated for that, not for fitting in, but for standing out.
Right. And it's hard.
Yes.
It's hard because I've always been that way. I've never fit in with other people. And that's the hard part, is that when you're different, you're kind of weird, but you know what? That's what makes you different, is to be weird and embrace it. And, even through school and even now, I see the clickiness with the music industry, even just in the Valley here, that their friends invite their friends or whatever. It has nothing to do with their talent. It has to do with their people or whatever, that, oh, my buddy likes this band. You go there and you're like, they're not so good. But you just have to stand true. And that's the hard part, is to believe in yourself. And just recently, our friends say, like we did this song Torn by Natalie and Brulia, and I just sing it, right? And somebody says, I like how you do that song. And then I think it makes me think, okay, I'm coming out in the music, right? Like I'm starting to learn who I am. And as a musician, because when I started, I didn't know. I thought, well, who am I? Am I Ann Wilson? Am I Aretha Franklin? Am I Nina Simone? Am I these people? No, you can't be those people, but you can be influenced by them to become who you really are, which is the hard part, I think. It's tough, but yeah. So I guess that's why it's a big question for me, is because I love so many different genres, right? Like, where do I put that in my music? And it is starting to kind of come together though. I think just over time. Yeah.
Nice.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Somebody said on the chat wall, said Jill is a painter of sound. So you can use that as a quote.
Yeah.
Being freelance musicians, we or singers, songwriters, artists, we all know we needed to make a living for what we do, and we deserve to be appreciated in, not only just taking our music where we needed to be compensated. But sometimes making money by doing, what you can make money is not necessarily matching to what your heart is at. So I think in that situation, I want to ask Krystle, as a singer and a songwriter, if you have to keep doing, say, a club or bar gig at the same time, these covers are not what you want to do. How do you balance that?
Oh, good question. Woo! Now we're digging deep. I think for a while there, I was doing it to my own, dissatisfaction. And I stopped loving doing that. And I sort of stepped back and I made more space in it. And then more opportunities flooded in that I had more passion for. For example, I didn't want to stay out until 2 a.m. and sing for 4 hours, and basically ravage my instrument as a result. I wanted to do stuff that I had, like real interest and I don't know, like passion for. So I did that. I stepped back a little bit, and then collaborations, let's bring it right back to that. I opened up an opportunity to create a theater show called Hey Viola, and it's about Viola Desmond's, civil rights story here in Canada. And then I did the BC Touring Council showcase, and that opened up an opportunity for an agent to come to me and say, do you want to teach Motown to school kids and tell about Black history through that medium? And my cultural sort of infusion made like this blossom of satisfaction come to the work that I'm doing. And then I can set aside the stuff that felt like it was moneymaker. So everything can be, my point is that everything can be a stepping stone. And, serving was a stepping stone to being a full-time musician, then a cover band was a stepping stone to being an original musician. And then, but an original musician is not and probably won't ever pay me to be a full-time gig. But then you open up all these other opportunities that you actually have like real joy from, and you can really share a real message with. And so that's my personal path. But I mean, you can still sing a cover show and enjoy the heck out of it by bringing yourself to it. Like Jill was saying, she brought herself to the performance of Torn. She, I like to bring myself to the performance of a lot of these songs that, hey, maybe a Stevie Wonder song needs a little bit of rock infused into it. Maybe the performance of it could be a little more rock and roll, and or maybe some rock and roll could be a little more funky or whatever. And you can always find a little bit of your own voice in anything that you do to make it more enjoyable.
Right. I think the Lady Gaga is also another example. She's a pianist, and she had, formal vocal training, but just so many people were doing the same thing. How would she stand out? She certainly found whatever way, some people approve, some don't, but she got that spot for her, and she became an icon, unique. Now seems like she's more going back to originally she was wanting to do. Now she has this freedom to do that.
Absolutely. I was going to say, like, look at how she's changed in how we've met her and how we now know to see her now. And just think of many other artists who have done the same thing. Nicki Minaj was, again, a very show person. What's her name? She's on American Idol. I Kissed a Girl and I Liked It. What's that? Katy Perry. She, again, made that very kind of cartoony entrance into the world. And now she's toned back to be a much more sort of simmered down, authentic version of what I think herself to be, right? So these journeys happen with absolutely every artist, from the biggest stars to us indie folk.
So earlier, Mandy, you were saying, yeah, you've been doing music for 8 years?
Well, I've been performing technically since I was 5, like
wow.
Growing up as a dancer, actor, singer. And I mean, I've always wanted to have my hand in all the pies. And I never wanted to be pigeonholed as just one of those three things. But yeah, it's been a journey for sure. I mean, I'm an artist at heart. But was there a question further to?
Yeah, well, earlier somebody put out a message, if any of you who has a track, a video, if you want to share with us or to the public, then please send a link to us, and the Red Chamber Cultural Society will share.
So the question is emailing the links the best way to get them to us? Yes. Here we've got emergencebc@gmail.com.
I was going to say, I think Jill said that you had something you wanted to share, but you didn't want it to be public. Is that correct? If anybody wants feedback on anything, I'm happy to, like, if you put it up in our general area and you want feedback, or you want some sort of, I don't know what, advice or something, and that's the kind of thing that you need, then we're happy to do it, outside of this sphere as well. So at least I'm volunteering to, give a watch and help with anything.
It looks like Deirdre is volunteering too.
That's a great point, Krystle. I'm just wondering if we should funnel everything still to that main emergencebc@gmail, and you all participants can just flag to us, I want feedback on this, or please post this to the website, so you can distinguish for us what action you'd like us to take. And then, if that main email account gets one for feedback as opposed to for public consumption, then potentially that could be forwarded to the mentors, and then we could give you sort of like one-on-one feedback.
And both you and I, Deirdre, we're instrumentalists, and I know what kind of musicians or musical instruments would work for me in general in terms of collaboration. I wanted to hear your story. How did you choose your collaborator in terms of, finding artistic uniqueness for you and for your instrument?
That is a really interesting question. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I've had a few really meaningful collaborations. A lot of them have been duos for me. So collaborating with one other person. And I would say two of my biggest ones, the first one was Touchtone Duo, which was with a Russian mouth harp player, which in Russia, the instrument is called vargan. So it was sort of like Canada and Russia coming together. It was these two different instruments, or it was the same type of instrument, but from two different cultures. And we were playing them as duets. So sometimes we would pick instruments that were an octave apart. So they were still in the same key, but an octave apart, so that there would be like a higher melody line and like a lower bass line. And it was really neat. We were able to really explore a lot of the textural possibilities of the instrument. And I couldn't have done that the same way with a different musical instrument. It was because they were both mouth harps that we were really able to explore the extended possibilities of the harmonic overtones. So sometimes when you think about a collaboration, you want to think, who is really similar to me? Because you can learn a lot from actually collaborating with somebody who's very, very similar, but also who's really different from me. So the really different from me duo was actually with a Persian Kurdish musician, and who played santur and daf, which is frame drum. So he and I did a number of collaborations. So in Iran, there is a mouth harp. It's called zanburak. It means little bee because it makes a buzzing sound. Vargan, by the way, the Russian name just means like mouth instrument, basically. So the zanburak in Iran, I played with this Iranian musician, and that was really different because suddenly I'm exposed to the harmonic side of things through, all of these different modes that are found in traditional classical Persian music. and also traditional rhythms, like time signatures that have an odd number of beats in each bar, right? So that was really fun because I can use my instrument as a melody instrument, but also as a percussion instrument. So that allowed me to really explore with that. So whereas the two mouth harp duo was really about the harmonic overtones, then the more intercultural one was more about like, oh, well, what scales can I actually play in with this instrument, and what rhythms can I really explore, and what can I learn from my collaborator, and what can my collaborator learn from me? How can my collaborator grow from trying to accommodate? Sometimes he had to play a bit quieter so that my instrument could be heard. And the other great thing about that collaboration was that that person also had a full band. And so because we had collaborated as a duo, I was also invited to play with his band, which had a rotating, this was when I was doing my PhD in London. So there was a rotating personnel moving through that band of people from Iraq, Syria, Kurds, Turkish Kurds, lots of people from across this whole region of shared culture. And I met so many amazing musicians through that band. It was just an absolute honor. So even one little experimental duo collaboration can actually lead to you getting invited to sit in with a whole band and getting invited to improvise with like really amazing improvisers. And you can learn so much about yourself from stepping out of your comfort zone and just going for it, which I did. And it was just amazing. And I miss that time as well. So yeah, I would say similar actually to Mehan's experience, don't be afraid to improvise and learn more about improvisation. I know that's such a turning point in Mehan's story as an artist. And I think for me it is too, to realize that I love not having a script. And that's really a place for me to shine and let the weirdness out and let whatever is coming through me in the moment, let it out without fear of judgment, without fear of, am I going to play a wrong note? Well, I forget, there's some famous jazz musician who said, there's no such thing as a wrong note. I'm totally butchering the quote. I can't remember it, but there's no such thing as a wrong note. The only thing that determines a wrong note is the note that you play after it. So if you hear yourself playing a note that you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting, you roll with it. If you fight with it, and if you go, oh, that wasn't in the key that I thought I was in, and then the next note you play is in the key that you were trying to be in, it's going to sound like it's in the wrong key. However, if you go, oh, did I just modulate there? Roll with it. Now we're in this key. Hey, look, that was totally intentional. Yeah. So there's a lot of that. Like you can use mistakes, use wrong things. That's one of the things I love about improv so much, is it's very sort of, it can be very, you can use it as a self-affirmation tool in a way. So yeah, I hope that answers it.
Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to finish up because we got cut off because we were talking right to the end there. But that imposter syndrome of, you know, as artists and females, I just wanted to touch on, like, you know, ask people for testimonials or like something that's going to boost you up, that's going to make you feel awesome. And so maybe that's something to look at, Jill, with, you know, any of the past shows that you've done or what have you. Reach out and ask for some of those, you know, glowing reviews and testimonials of people that know you, but also people that don't. And just look at, you know, these awesome, you know, comments that people have of how you've touched them. Because yeah, that imposter syndrome like rears its ugly head right when you don't think it's gonna. And, you know, you need to stay strong and, you know, be true to you. And I think that might be a nice way to see yourself through other people's eyes. I just wanted to say that.
Can I just add something to that topic? Even though I wasn't in your breakout room with you, that reminded me of something I did want to add earlier, which was jumping off of what Tissa has done in the last year, which is to really define with some key words who she is as an artist. And personally, when I hear R&B singer with Middle Eastern flair, I'm like, give it to me. I want to hear it immediately. Like, yes, that's got me. And I just wanted to share with you that I have a friend who's a composer, singer, band leader, Robin Jacob. Her band is Only a Visitor. And she actually reached out to her Facebook community to try and define her sound. And she asked her community, what genre is my band? Because they're so cross genre. And she actually crowdsourced an answer to that, which I thought was so cool. And she had tons of responses, like, I don't know, like 50 different things, people saying, oh, well, you're like this and you're like this. And, you know, okay, you got to be careful when you're crowdsourcing stuff on the internet. If you've ever asked anybody on Facebook for advice, sometimes, you know, you get some unwanted advice, or you get advice that isn't good or isn't useful to you. But even sifting through like 50 responses from friends and fellow musicians who've heard your music, going, well, I think this is what's special about you. It can help you define what your keywords are. So definitely don't be afraid to ask and do that reach out process. Use Facebook, use social media. It was pretty cool. And she ended up defining her genre as art pop. And that's now what she uses in her grant applications. It's really clean, it's really simple. It speaks to her. It feels like she feels what she does is well represented in 2 simple words, but those are 2 simple words that often you don't hear together that much. So I just wanted to share that little experience.
So I want to share a little bit conversation that Tissa and I had. I am very proud of her, and the first thing I asked was how she has been since the first mentorship that was the year before in May. So it's a bit of over a year. And in this year, Tissa has achieved a lot, and she recorded 4 songs and 1 music video, and it was going to be out, but you know, unfortunately, we're now in this pandemic and things postponed. But it seems to me she found at this point where that connection between who she is and what her big heritage is. So she could pull that Persian heritage into her, but not to lose her individuality as somebody who grew up in Canada. And she used one Persian poem in one of her songs, and at the same time also used electronics. So a lot of elements. So I am so proud of you, Tissa. And as an artist, you know, who would stand up? It's people who cross boundary, people who shatter all the boxes, all the glasses. Those people will eventually stand up. So I can see you have a future that would, you know, as Deirdre was saying, I wanted this, you know, presenters would want this, you know, cross this, that. They can all click that, all these boxes, not to mention that gives you an advantage to apply for grants. Make it, you know, very obvious, but we're not there to talk about that. I think just every artist, we, as an individual, we want to stay true to ourselves, but that truth is not a small me. It's who I am, who my parents are, who my grandparents are, my personal experience, and also as a group, my culture. And for you, your culture is not one culture. Your culture is a multicultural itself. And that is really a good selling point. And to build who you are on that, you have a really long way to go, really bright future.
And I just wanted to add to what May was saying. And first of all, thank you so much. Because what you just said means the world to me. And as I've mentioned now before, a lot of the tools that have driven me to where I am today, I learned from Emergence. So I've had a couple of talks with Krystle, for example, on her Instagram live show. And I'd mentioned to her that at the time that Emergence was happening was right before I was going to have my first show with a band. And this leads back to the imposter syndrome. conversation, because the first thing that sort of came over me was that exact feeling. And what really helped was to just have that conversation with Krystle at the time, and just for her to literally tell me, like, these are some things, some tools that you can do. This is how you can prepare for it. And just realize that there's no need to feel the way that you do, because what you're doing is good. People are gonna want to be a part of it, so let them be a part of it. And then again, talking about imposter syndrome, my conversation with May in the breakout room, we were talking a lot about cultural identity. And I was talking to her about how I feel like when you're in a minority group for the country that you live in, there's sometimes a lot of pressure put on you to act as a representative for the entire community, which not only is, as May was saying, like, there's so much diversity within a group like that, that it would just be impossible and also not accurate. And so I was talking about how if I were to represent anybody, it would be specifically immigrants from Iran, not necessarily people from Iran. But I still sometimes put that pressure on myself a little bit to fit perfectly into every single box, when actually my entire life has been like not quite fitting into any of the boxes. And I used to, growing up, that's the last thing you want to be, is to be different from people. But growing up, you realize that that's actually what your superpower is, and the more comfortable you are with it, the more people are gonna want to be around you and like listen to your music and hear what you have to say, So yeah, thank you.
This year is such a unique year, especially for artists. Most of freelance artists are not most, every single one is suffering in a sense. But also, I think this is an opportunity not only for personal growth, but also a time to continue to craft your art. We see so many online concerts, and we used to have physical theaters, venues that we can diverge all these performances. But now this is online. So who would stand out? Still, it's people who have great craft, also have something unique that will stand out. So I'd say we want, especially for young artists, this is a good time to craft your art and make unique, because you cannot go wrong. This is where you test. Internet.
Yeah, I want to add to that. This is a challenging time, and this is a time that will be a limbo time for some of us, but that's exactly why it is the right time to be asking the who am I questions right now, especially. The world is changing all around us. Who do you want to be, not just as an artist, but as a person in this changing world? That is really important. That can be deeply unsettling, very uncomfortable questions to face up to in our lives, but now it is that time. And interestingly, it's that time for the whole collective, whether they like it or not, whether we embrace it or not. And the other thing I wanted to say is, yes, this time is very challenging. It's very challenging to be an artist right now, but it also always was. Mm-hmm. It really always was. And we are the creative class. We are the creative sector. If anybody can make lemonade out of these lemons, it's us. It's these people right here, because we have the brain power, we have the energy, we have the conviction, we have the emotion, whatever our spark is, we bring that to the table. Like Krystle, so inspiring, just started a daily coffee chat live stream series on her Instagram during the pandemic. And through that, she's built this whole community. So it's just really looking for those opportunities and embracing the discomfort and the weirdness and going, okay, but I'm a creative. Like, we creatives are the leaders actually in a crisis. Mm-hmm. We actually are. And people look to us for leadership. They look to us for their humanity. They look to us to guide them philosophically through these times. So never think, even if you're playing in a cover band, never think that you are not providing some kind of value to people right now. I think it's really important to hold on to that, even if you're not feeling very productive right now, because it's actually very hard to be productive in this time. Know that we have value, know that we are an essential service.
I have to say, like, I feel like an imposter being a mentor in this group. I learn so much every time, and I just love being a part of this whole program, because I learn from the mentees, I learn from the other mentors, I learn so much, and it's amazing. But I think that's a good thing. I think my willingness and my eagerness and my nervousness to learn is what helps drives me forward. And you know, and I think that's a wonderful thing. In regards to, I had something to say that was piggybacking on, oh yes, May said, you know, we have this whole platform now, not in theaters, not in physical spaces, and how do we stand out in a digital or virtual format? Like Deirdre said at the very beginning, you build your community, or you build your community starting with 2, and then it grows to 3 and 5 and 10. And then you have a community and people want to hear from you. I didn't think what I was going to be doing was going to bring or draw any kind of crowd. I did it out of sheer boredom and purpose to drive myself forward. And what I mean by what I did was I started a coffee chat every single morning, and then I did my virtual cabaret every Tuesday night. And at first nobody was coming. And then 10 people showed up, and then 20 people showed up. And I mean, we maxed out at 20, like, don't get me wrong, but if you build it, they will come. And the more authentic and the more solid and genuine a foundation that you build anything from, it is going to grow stronger and better and healthier. So I guess my lasting or my final words are like, just continue to be your pure, beautiful, authentic selves, and the uniqueness will shine through no matter what you do.
I want to thank again our sponsors, Creative BC and the province of British Columbia, and of course the host of this virtual mentorship program, Red Chamber Cultural Society. And yeah, thanks again for everybody who attended, and hope to see you all here again in another month. You all take care, stay safe, stay healthy, to you and your loved ones.
Thank you,
Katherine.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you, Katherine.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
You guys are awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank
Stay
you.
awesome.
You're awesome.
You and you and you and you and you and you and you. You were
I love
Girl
it.
power.
Yes.
Exactly. Girl power.
Ciao, ladies. Have
Bye,
a great
everyone.
weekend.
Have a good
You
weekend.
too.
Bye.
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 Bye.